Hi, this is James Cook of the University of Maine at Augusta, and I'm recording this video for students in SSC 420, the Senior Projects Capstone class. In this session of the class, we're going to be workshopping research projects, and that's going to mean a few things. The first is going to be looking to the future, to the UMA Undergraduate Research Conference. Then after that, we're going to talk in general about some steps in thinking while writing a research paper. How do you go about filling a section of a research paper, an academic empirical research paper? Because this is the work that you're doing right now. So I'm going to lead you through a general thought process in that. Then I'm going to be providing some paper feedback, and when I do that, I'm going to try not to refer to your first and last names, but to your initials, because this is going to be public video. And then finally, I want to talk about prioritizing your tasks in the next few weeks. Which ones are important really to get done first? And when you feel like you need to find inspiration, where can you find that inspiration? It's not quite like creative writing in that there's a really specific process for finding that inspiration. And it involves some of the ideas I'm going to be sharing in the previous two steps of our class agenda. But I'll just restate that at the end. So we have news on the UMA Undergraduate Research Conference. There is now a call for papers that has been released in the last week. The deadline for you to include your submission, which is required for this class for every student, is March 22nd. That is during spring break. So what you can expect from me is to be getting in touch with you during the week of spring break and making sure that you have put in your submission. To do that submission, you don't really need much more, for most of you, than what you already have. So you have these drafts of your work. You have titles, and most of you have full abstracts. Some of you need to work a little bit on that. TD. So an abstract is not difficult. It is a paragraph. We'll talk in a minute about how to work up an abstract. Most of you are doing pretty fine with that. So what's required? Not everything. You don't have to have your research findings by March 22nd. You just need to have mostly what you already have. And you need to indicate how you're going to participate. So this is a class in which we have some people, a couple people meeting with me personally, and most people participating online. Some of you are close to Augusta or Bangor. We have our campuses there of UMA, and that means that you can physically participate. I think that's ideal. But there are ways for you to participate even if you can't physically be there, some of which involve at the same time participating in a session, some of which allow you to participate even if you couldn't be available that day. What day? The day of April 26th. That is when the research conference is going to be. But let's take a look at the call for papers, which is available on the honors website. A little strange, but not too strange, because it turns out that the honors program at UMA is the sponsor of the Undergraduate Student Research Conference. So here's some information. It's going to be Friday, April 26th from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. On the Augusta and Bangor campuses. That's lovely. If you do participate during that day and present, I would recommend going and seeing how others present as well. It's a great way to learn and see what others are doing, and also to see how good your work is compared to where some other students are in the process. So you are welcome to invite friends and family. And there's code language here. This conference will include student presentations of work on a variety of subjects and a variety of formats. That means bring whatever you've got. So you're good. You've got some research. That's great. Um, so there's some indications about what a conference is, which is good. And then here's what's really important. You can, if you are showing up in person, I will expect you to do a paper presentation. Most people in the social sciences do that with a PowerPoint with some slides to summarize their work. Sometimes they do it with handouts, and that would be fine too. I would not like you to read your paper. That is not typically done in the social sciences. That's a kind of an English thing to do. And frankly, given that you will have tables of results, it wouldn't make sense, right? Or if you have charts that are graphing out some patterns in data, you need to be able to show that and then to talk about it, not to, you can't read a table. So that would not make sense. Work with a PowerPoint or with handouts. So I would like you, if you're showing up personally, to do that. But if you're not showing up personally, here are some options. The first is that you can engage online. So as you can read in this section, when you go look at the web page yourself, you might create a website in which you have a written text of a presentation. You might record a YouTube video, excuse me. You might also connect live to a presentation. So you might be scheduled, even though, say, you might be in the state of Florida or Texas or California, you might be able to make a presentation where you connect through video conference and share your screen, and you're able to see and hear what others are doing in the room as well. You can participate in that way, either live or recorded. So that's lovely. The other big opportunity for you is to create a poster presentation. So this is not like a poster that you would hang in your dorm room. It has a particular format. It looks a particular way. It is typically like a 3 by 5 foot or 4 by 6 foot kind of poster. I can help you with the printing of that if you would create that. This is work that is graded in the class, your presentation. So of course you're going to want to put in your best presentation, whether it is through a paper or a poster or a YouTube video, or you create a website. So let's take a look at what the poster presentation format allows you to do. There are a number of templates for academic posters, and you can find them fairly easy. If we head to Google and we search for academic poster template, you'll find a number of these. So, I'm just going to click on one of them. I'm not planning this out. Okay, so here's a 3 foot by 4 foot, a 3 foot by 6 foot, right? You can go vertical. Most people go with a horizontal landscape format. So, this is 3 feet by 5 feet. You could download that. It's going to typically be in a PowerPoint format, which seems weird, but it's going to be like one massive big slide that you would then print out. That's a fairly typical approach. So it's been downloaded. We can open that up and take a look at what the structure looks like. The basic idea of the structure of an academic research paper is to follow the format of the paper itself, right? Introduction with literature review, That's the first part underneath the title, right? And you can put in an academic logo. You can insert, well, if you enable editing, you can insert pictures. Like you could put the logo of UMA right in here. You could put something over here about the program that you're working with. Then you're going to put in your methods, you're going to put in your results with the figure, and you're going to put in conclusions all along with your references section. And the nice thing about the PowerPoint format is that with the template, you can just take out the pictures you don't want, put in pictures that you do want, type in these ready-made text sessions, and I can work with university printing to make sure that you get a good poster printed and have made available. So let's see what one example of such a poster would look like. Okay, this is one that I put together for a conference, oh goodness, years ago now, 3 or 4 years ago. And you know, you can't read any of it, right? Let's take a look here and let's you know, even making it big here, it's barely readable, but you have to remember that it's going to be 3 feet wide. You're not going to want to put, you notice, all the text of your paper in there. You're going to need to summarize each section. And then the idea is that people can look at these. You will see, excuse me, you will see in the results section that there's regression model results. You can see here I've put some examples of data sources as pictures. I include a section where I talk about limitations. It's always good to talk about the limitations of your research because, especially in a conference setting, other people are going to find them. So if you put them out there, guess what? People will be impressed that you talk about your limitations. It's a strange thing in social science research, but it's true. So bullet points are your friends. Relatively small sets of data, especially when it comes to literature review. Boil it down to a few theories, competing theories, each with their own ideas and their own hypotheses that are generated. You notice I have down here under each theory a hypothesis that is generated from the theory. This is something that we'll talk about today. Literature is your friend. It is not just something you have to do in order to write a paper. It can give you some ideas of what variables you should use and what variables you should collect. So this is a presentation option. Okay. But that said, you don't have to have all this ready by March 22nd, right? Really, what's required at this point is only a title and an abstract. The rest of it you still have, gosh, you have a good 5 weeks to get ready. And I know that doesn't sound like too much, but you've already done a lot of work, and that work is been pretty substantial. And you'll find at this point, everything in your research starts to fall into place. Starts to. But let's talk about that a little bit. You are now starting to write your research paper. You've handed in some drafts, most of you. Marina and Trevor, I won't use last names. I didn't have those for you from you by class time, and they were due a couple days before then. So I won't have comments for you today because I don't have anything to respond to. But I still want to see something from you because I'd like to see the progress you're making. But most of you have already have a number of pages, and this is great because it means that the writing of it won't be too hard. But you might find yourself thinking, because you're doing this for the first time, what the heck do I put in there? So one great example from the text that comes from the previous course, 320, the bread and butter research methods courses, is in Appendix B. There's a reason that South and Spitz's housework in marital and non-marital households is included. It's from a flagship journal, the American Sociological Review. But more than that, it's put there because they've done a really good job of showing exactly how you can go through writing. They model the steps very explicitly. So make a reference there, but let's talk through the sections of a paper and the things you might be thinking about while you do that. So let's start with the title. So the job of the title is not to be spiffy or stylish. Well, you could try that. It's really supposed to be straightforward, and it is supposed to achieve a very specific goal. And that is, for someone walking by, if it's a poster, or someone thumbing through a journal, or someone who is deciding which session of the conference that they're supposed to go to, it is supposed to indicate exactly, in a nutshell, what your research is about. So you should indicate the topic. You could indicate the dependent variable. You could use the variables. That is what South and Spitz do when they talk about housework in marital and non-marital households. I mean, count those words: 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. In 6 words, they've indicated that they have an independent variable, housework, a dependent variable of housework, excuse me, that they have an independent variable, marital status, that affects housework. And they've also told you the case that they're using, which is that they're looking at households. So that's really explicit, and it's also short and sweet. I also like the title that is used by student JA, because it just uses the research question. You can simply state the research question, and that's a great title. You can also use more generally, you can make if you don't want to ask a sentence, you can make a statement of this being the subject: the importance of national security and human rights in a sample of Americans. That tells you a little bit more in what context are we doing the research. So the title should serve a purpose. It's not just there to take up space. Nothing is in a research article. It all should be pretty efficient. The abstract should be very efficient. It is one paragraph to summarize everything else. Everything else that you do in the paper. You should have a 150 to 200 words maximum. It should have a statement of the topic. And then you should identify in the next sentence a problem in the literature, because there has to be some reason that you are writing this paper. It has to fill some gap, some niche, right, that has not been occupied before. Perhaps it's always polite to indicate that there has been progress previously made in understanding, right? And chances are that you are not the first person to write a research paper on this topic. However, then you move on after acknowledging people politely that there are existing gaps in understanding, and describe what they are in a sentence. Or perhaps there have been inconsistent findings. Sometimes it seems that one thing matters, sometimes it seems that something else matters, and they don't seem to be compatible. You're going to take a look again, and you're going to see what you find. And the idea is that you are remedying that problem here. So that's like a next sentence in your abstract. Then you talk about the data and its source, what you're going to be looking at, and then how you're going to look at it, what your method is, what are your variables, what kind of analysis do you carry out. Then you describe in a sentence or two your findings, and then why people should care. The substantive significance of the findings for people who care about the subject. Um, what can people do with it? What does it inform us to be able to do? Right. What light does it shine? Then you're going to then in the rest of the paper, you're going to spell out in all the details of that. The abstract should represent the organization of your paper, right? So in your introduction, you're going to introduce the topic and its significance. Here's what I'm talking about. Here's why it matters. And then that can be a nice paragraph or two. And then sometimes then there's a separate section called literature review, or sometimes the heading just says introduction and then it just continues on into the literature review. So you can talk about the topic, you can introduce it in a paragraph or two, and then tell me what the literature says. The academic, peer-reviewed, published research. So you're going to want to review relevant theories from that research. What are the strains of explanation? What are the stories that are told? And those stories that are told, what kind of variables do they include? What resulting hypotheses do they suggest? What is the pattern in the findings? That's the neat thing about what a literature review can do, ideally. It helps you not only just come up with stuff on your own, you're actually not supposed to come up with everything all on your own. You should reference the work of others and the ideas that they've had, the stories that they've told when you're telling your own story. The place where you can insert yourself in telling your story in the literature review is that you can identify gaps in the literature, you can identify inconsistent findings that need to be remedied. One of the two, okay? Perhaps certain areas have been looked at, but not other areas. Or perhaps it's been looked at exhaustively, but there's some tension about what is really going on. You need to figure out, after having read the literature, all the research that is most relevant to your own work, what the themes are. I can't tell you what that is because you're going to read that literature, and you should be reading it now. So it's nice at the end of every section where you talk about a theoretical tradition, then organize it that way, right? Not by paper. Don't say, I read this paper and this is what it said. I read this paper and here's another paragraph in which I say what it said. I read a third paper and here's what it said. No, you should organize it. Organize it according to the theme of thinking and themes and the patterns of findings, so that when you're done with a section in the literature review, at the end of each, you should be able to boil it down in a nutshell in that story. What is the resulting hypothesis from that strain in the from that tradition in research? What kind of thing would they predict if you were going to do a research project in it, which is what you're doing. The neat thing about that is that it's giving you a gift. It suggests that different independent variables are going to affect the dependent variable in different ways for different reasons. And it's going to tell you what the relevant variables are, the relevant independent variables. If there are multiple theories about a topic, you should have, as a result, in your literature review, at the end, multiple statements of hypotheses indicating multiple sets of variables that you should be looking at. And since we've covered the idea of multiple regression, which is that it allows you to put multiple independent variables in and see how they each independently in this regression equation we looked at affect the value of the dependent variable, you should be able, if you can, in your data, that's the next section, to go out and measure these, take them into account. So in the data, describe how you actually went out and got the observations of all these independent variables and your dependent variable that are suggested by the hypotheses above. The literature review and the variables in the literature that you review should it should inform what variables you use in your data section. You should conceptualize those variables, um, uh, which means you talk about, do they have dimensions? Do they have indicators of something, like an indicator of love? Um, say what those dimensions and indicators are, okay? And then operationalize, which means exactly how do you go out and when you're filling a data set and you're typing in the value of a variable, how do you get that value of that variable? Exactly. What is it that you measure? Exactly how do you do it? And you'll notice that in the South and Spitz article, they do that. They describe exactly in their data and methods section. Look at page 545. For a number of variables, they describe exactly how they got the data, and exactly how they made measurements, when there were uncertainties in measurements, how they handled that. That's what operationalization means. Look at page 545, Appendix B, for some really great operationalizations. And right, as what South and Spitz do is they describe two things. First, what they plan to go out and measure, right? So they went out and tried to measure things. And then, what did they do when the measurement ran into trouble? Um, so what if there was missing data? Or what if someone said something vague? How is it interpreted? Are there certain circumstances in which you want to exclude some cases from analysis? Maybe because something unusual happened, or maybe someone got up and walked away during an interview after 2 minutes, or, it depends on what kind of research you're doing, but often there will be cases you need to exclude, be explicit about it, and indicate how many cases were excluded out of how many cases that you overall collected. It's not a problem in your research to have wrinkles, you just need to disclose them. So then you need to talk about your methods. Sometimes data and methods is one section called data and methods. Sometimes data is one section and then methods is another section. That's up to you. You can use either format, but it should indicate either some form of qualitative research or quantitative research. And the method that you described there, the process by which you're going to go out and test your hypotheses, if you're doing quantitative research, is going to involve some kind of contingent mean. And there's multiple regression analysis if you have multiple independent variables. If you only have one independent variable, you can simply talk about the differences in the mean of that outcome variable, that dependent variable, for two different values of an independent variable, right? If you're doing qualitative analysis, you may not be testing hypotheses directly. Qualitative work is important to do when you are in a new area looking at a community that hasn't been looked at before. And instead what you do there is you describe the process by which you're going to categorize the responses, the strategy that you will have used when you're looking at all these results for identifying common themes, shared themes. So after the methods come the findings. So you should describe what you're doing. You should indicate how many people you looked at if you're looking at people. Otherwise, how many cases if it's not a person that you're looking at. Maybe it's a community. How many communities? How many observations did you make? Then do some frequency distributions. Talk about how often different values of different variables emerged. You can also describe central tendency, which means overall, what's one number that can describe what's going on. If you're doing a quantitative analysis, you could do the mean overall, that's the average. You could do the median, which is you take all the values, you put them in order, and you pick the middle number. This should be familiar from Social Science 320. You can also talk about the mode. Perhaps there was one value of a variable or one common observation or theme that just showed up and dominated everything. Talk about that. Then, if you are doing deductive quantitative work, you should do some hypothesis testing. This is where you put in the contingent means, or this is where you put in the table of regression results. And you will notice that there are Descriptive statistics, right? Page 547, Appendix B, Table 1. And then there's OLS, coefficients for regression. That just means they did a multiple regression analysis. And here are some columns of results. And those numbers are just indicating um, uh, what the equation is. You just read it down the column. And I can help you if you end up doing a multiple regression. I can help you format a table and present those regression results. And if you're doing qualitative analysis, you should have a vivid description of the themes or the patterns or the categories that emerge. And then have a conclusion. Describe what the pattern of findings means overall. What are the themes? What do they suggest in terms of some overarching story if you're doing qualitative work? That overarching story is called a theory, right? Do you have a new theory that you've generated for the situation that no one has ever looked at before? If you're doing quantitative research, tell me were the hypotheses consistent or inconsistent with your findings? If there are multiple hypotheses for multiple theories, which one was closer to your results, or maybe none of them were? And then finally, answer the question in the conclusion. So what? So why should the reader care? The only reason that they care should not be that you worked really hard and you did some research. And isn't that great? It should inform something that people care about. What people care about could be academic, so it could be that they just want to understand something. And, you help clarify which stories about a topic, which explanations actually seem to be lined up with what's actually going on out in the observable world. The second kind of so what answer is substantive. You could talk about how does this affect what you're going to do in the world? Either as an individual person living your life, maybe a person who's facing a particular situation or circumstance, or if you are a policymaker who is trying to decide if there's a problem, how do I fix this? Well, in order to figure out how to fix it, you need to know how the problem emerges. How does it work? Or if it's something good that's happening, like say in business, it's about business productivity. It's not a problem, but it's a success that you want to have. And in that case, you'd want to talk about, how to you go about making money. Or maybe if you're a protester, how do you make trouble? How is it that you end up doing what you want to do, understanding a little bit better how the whole thing works? That is what you're able to contribute to the world. And then finally, you should talk about, in a sentence or two or three, some directions for future research. Because typically when you do research, you almost inevitably either realize that you didn't address some things that should have been addressed, and that's something you learn through the research process, or you recognize the limitations of your method and you realize, boy, I would have researched this differently. I would have done it this way. And you can suggest that to some people. Or if you discover some new interesting knowledge and it really says something interesting, it should suggest some new questions that now you, as a researcher, would want to ask next. And that is really great for someone who is a budding researcher like yourself to read a successfully published research paper that then says, oh, look, here are some more questions to be asked. It really helps the next generation of researchers or the next round of research to commence. And you should help, paying it forward, help the next round of research along. What should happen next? And then finally, of course, you should have your references section right at the end. And indicating, where you got your ideas from, what your sources were, what your sources of data were, if it was secondary, and the like. That's the important work that you should do. And, if you spell this out, I mean, you look at all that stuff to talk about, and you just kind of plug in this work, and you take a day here to take one line on, and 2 days later you take another line on. Writing a research paper is a lot easier if you don't just look at it as one whole gigantic thing and instead look at it as a set of tasks in reporting that you need to engage in. Then you can go back after you've done all this and make sure everything lines up. So, for instance, if you have variables described in your method, they should somehow be consistent with what you're talking about in your literature review. Otherwise, why are they there? Where did they come from? You should have some kind of justification for the variables you have, and look for that kind of alignment or misalignment, and then adjust accordingly. That's a great way to help you really organizing your own thinking, whether it's for a conference presentation like you'll make, or for a research paper which you will have written, and maybe you'll be ready to submit it to a journal yourself by the end. I think some of you may. So that's some steps in writing a research paper. This is a natural spot for you to pause the video if you'd like, because then what I'd like to do is to offer some feedback. And we've talked about the research conference steps in general in writing a research paper. Now you've made some progress, and so I am about to be critical, meaning that I am going to say, oh, this is good and this is not so good. Please understand that when I'm indicating that some improvement needs to be made, that everybody through the research process always, as they move forward, needs to have areas of improvement. I always start out with work that is not quite there myself, and I often need someone to review it for me and help me concentrate it, help me think through my line of thinking, or my strategy for analysis, or my strategy for collecting data. All that stuff sometimes needs to be worked out. So understand that this is a natural part of the process, but here are a couple of themes. Okay, the first is don't just do a literature review to do it. Do it for a reason. Have it inform your work. That's essential. The literature that has been done before, it makes suggestions. Listen to those suggestions. Follow those suggestions, and then do something with it when you're working with data. Also, use that literature review to look for data sources, because it's surprising what might be out there. So think about that as two general themes that you're going to now see brought up. But let's talk about those. So student AR, who's talking about stress in the workplace. You have a nice title page. You have a nice abstract, actually. I like your abstract. So you talk about where you collect your data from, the General Social Survey. That's really nice. You last couple pages of your sentences, of your abstract are a little broad. You say you will summarize the data and discuss what you learned from your research. Don't say that you're going to do it. Take that space and summarize your data. Show me. I mean, I know you can't at this point, but eventually, when you do write that line in your abstract, it should be a summary of the data, and then you should conclude in that last sentence what you found and how it will contribute to future work. So make sure that you, moving on to the introduction / literature review, that you don't just talk about one piece of work per paragraph, which is what you seem to be doing. Bring them together into themes, bring them together into theoretical strains, and do make sure that you cite the work. So there's something from the American Institute of Stress, but there's no parenthetical citation here. So we, the readers, do not actually know which one that is, unless we go back here and we're trying to look through that references section, which you need to standardize your font for. That's a really small thing. I don't see it there. American Institute of Stress. I see the Indian Journal of Medical Research, the APA, Harris Interactive Polling, but I don't see that one. So, that's an indication this is going back and making sure everything is aligned. Have you put in all the references you need to? So, in this literature review, you are indicating some things. For instance, on page 3, you're indicating that, quote, individual distress and family tensions are linked to long work hours. That's great, because that is suggesting a variable that you're going to use, which in fact you do use. So that's great. But you then indicate at the bottom of page 3 that there are many factors that may be responsible for a person's stress at work. And these include poor work organization, poor work design. I'm not sure what the difference is between those two. Poor management, unsatisfactory working conditions, and lack of support from coworkers. Oh, okay. So those are other variables that have been said lead to stress. The thing is that when you talk about that, then in your methods and data, you should make sure that you include those variables. And you say only on page 5 that you say the data sets I will be working with, you mean the variables that you will be working with, include number of hours participant usually works a week and how often a participant finds work stressful. Only those 2 variables? What about those other variables, right? You say your research question is, does the amount of hours spent at work affect the amount of stress felt by an employee? Okay, so that is different than your literature review, right? You need to bring those into alignment. Your literature review says there are many possible sources of stress. If you're looking at the general social survey, how many of those factors? Let's take a look at what these should be. These are variables. The poorness or the goodness of the work organization, the poorness or the goodness of the work design, the poorness or the goodness of the management, this unsatisfactoriness or satisfactoriness of the working conditions, support or lack of support from coworkers and supervisors. So see if you can find GSS variables that have to do with that. If you can't, then that's one thing. But if you can, and there are variables that are suggested by the literature, by all means include them in your analysis, because then you're comparing different possible explanations, and you're in your regression equation, which we covered again in a previous week, you're able to simultaneously look at the effect of one variable and then the effect of the other variable side by side. Which one matters? Which one matters more? Which one matters less or not at all? Or in the opposite direction from what you predicted occasionally. So my final piece of feedback is that you say the question you will be asking is, does the amount of hours spent at work, independent variable, affect the amount of stress felt by an employee, dependent variable? But the title of your paper is The Effects of Stress in the Workplace, meaning that stress is like an independent variable and then something else is a dependent variable. That's a different research topic, right? If stress is the outcome, then it should not be the effects of stress in the workplace, but what leads to stress in the workplace as a question. And then you have a number of answers to work with. Okay, so that's something to think through. EO, how accessible is treatment for addiction? So this has got an abstract in here. The research project is focused on the topic of addiction and how accessible treatment is for addicts in Maine. Love that. So you might want to put Maine up in the title. It's a great research question. How accessible is treatment for addicts in Maine? It's largely descriptive. You might want to think about a multivariate question. in which you have an independent variable. Are there some kinds of addicts or some kinds of conditions that have more accessible treatment or less accessible treatment? Maybe the income of the addicts, do they have health insurance, things like that. So the availability, you say demand is so high and availability is so low already, although you haven't really done your research yet, so you don't know that. But you can presume that you might find that. We'll find out. And then you have a number of, it looks like you have some questions for your research paper to motivate them. Like, what are you researching? Why is it significant? How will you study it? What methods will you use? It looks like that's kind of cut and pasted in from somewhere. It'd be interesting to know where that's coming from. So you say with a method that there are no participants, that there are no human participants in my research project. And you say, however, my participants will be the different drug treatment centers. What those would be called as cases, right? Because this is not like an experiment and people aren't participating in an experiment. They're cases that you're observing. Different drug treatment centers, rehabilitation programs, and hospitals. Okay, and then you say the project will be using all public information that has already been shared with the public by the facilities themselves. Great. And you say it's going to be secondary data. But I don't see a source. Where is that going to come from? Okay, and you also, by the way, jumped right to the method section. You don't have a literature review. You have a template for a literature review, but no actual. These are stand-in citations. They're not actual citations. I want to see that literature review. It should be there. That should indicate what some of the variables are that lead to more available treatment or less available treatment, right? So you need to do that literature review before you start going out and measuring things. Otherwise, you will end up collecting data and you won't be gathering the right variables. How do you know what the right variables are? Look in the research literature. Is there research literature out there? Yeah, you bet. And how did those people in the research literature go and collect their data? What forms of secondary data did they use? You don't indicate what your source is, but maybe that source is out there for you to work with, student EO. So in order to figure that out, you say, yeah, you're going to be able to get whatever information you can get, depending on what I am able to gather. Right, if the goal is to get that data, and to figure out where to find it, let's do a literature review. Let's take a few minutes to do that. So let's, instead of looking at poster templates, let's go to Google Scholar. And let's start thinking about some key phrases from your work. So you say drug treatment centers. You're looking for some literature on that. You're talking about availability. What is availability about? What does it mean? Can you get in, admission, or do you have to wait? And you have a state, so state data in the United States. Okay, and we could start searching for these things and look. Oh, wow, there is a lot of information here. Okay, so some of this is not going to be relevant when you just start typing in your thing, your phrases, like promoting early HIV diagnosis and entry into care. Oh, that's not what you're thinking about. Okay, so what is it that we want? We want treatment centers. Maybe we need to say what it's for. Addiction. And the availability and wait time. Let's try that. You just go back and you think, oh, okay, what did I not say? Oh, accessibility of addiction treatment. Wow. Okay, results from a national study of outpatient substance abuse treatment organizations. Great, look at that. Okay, that's listen to that title. There is something for you to work from. Oh, wow. Okay, let's go through and let's read the abstract then to see what it might say. This study examined organization-level characteristics associated with the accessibility of outpatient addiction treatment. Oh, cool. Okay, so there was a survey that was done over 10 years. Okay, you're not going to be able to do that, but you can go through and you can, reading the full text, you can find some references. You can see what methods they used, what theories they used, what literature they cited, and then you can look, and you can click through who cited them. That's a 2003 article. Waiting time is a barrier to treatment entry. Journal of Drug Issues. There's something in 2006. Individual and system influences on waiting time for substance abuse treatment. Wow, that's like pretty much what you're interested in. So read these papers, right? And then when you read these papers, this is the Journal of Substance Abuse Treatment. You can look at waiting time. You can start to look at the factors. One of the factors impeding treatment entry is waiting time. Great. So this is someone who's looked at this kind of question. And why does waiting time matter? What are the factors? Section 1.2. What are the factors associated with waiting time? Boom. You've got some ideas already that you can work with. You don't copy and paste this stuff, right? But you read the papers that they've read, then you read that paper, you read some other papers, and you find the trends and you synthesize it in your own literature review. And then you can ask some questions like, how did they find this? Well, it looks like there was a clinical trial with a study in Dayton, Ohio. Yeah, that's, you're not going to be able to do a clinical trial in your time. So, what can we do? Well, we can look at, in Google Scholar, we can look at, if there's waiting time data sets, addiction treatment. And let's say, because you're trying to find information for Maine, let's look within the context of the United States. Patterns at admission day delays. Oh, you find more stuff. That's great. But, we could also just look overall in Google. And, we want some statistics. Oh, national survey. Oh, and what's this? There's a data set here. Treatment episode data set. Okay. Look down here, SAMHSA. Treatment episode data set. SAMHSA that's Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. Oh, they have data. That's cool. What kind of data? You could look at that. Well, serious mental illness, emotional disturbance. Cool. TEDS, treatment episode dataset. There it is again. Let's take a look at that. What is that? It compiles client-level data for substance abuse treatment admissions from state agency data systems. Okay, so I'm just reading this. State data systems collect data from facilities about their admissions to treatment and discharges from treatment. TEDS is an admission-based system. It doesn't, okay. And it has two major components, the admissions and the discharges. So you're interested in the admissions because you want to know, right, how accessible it is. Is there a delay in people getting in? Oh, cool. So can we get the data itself? Um, where can I download Ted's data? Oh, this is the annual report, but I want the data set. It's right here. Let's see, the latest year is 2016. That's not a surprise. It takes a while for them to count these things. Oh, neat. Here it is, the treatment episode data set. Oh, and you can download files. Oh, that's really cool. Oh, neat. Okay, wait, that's a PDF. I don't want to download a PDF. I want the data set. Where's the data set? I'm going to go back to Google and I want to download Ted's data set. SAMHSA. So, data files. Admissions, that's what I want. So I'm going to do this kind of exploration. Oh, and look at that, there it is. There's a lot of data, many years. Ooh, wow. So let's just look at the most recent one, 2016. And it's going to have data sets. It talks about the study scope, the geographic coverage, the methodology. Oh, nice. And this is the data set. Can we actually find the data? You know, you have to hunt around some. Oh, there it is. Okay, so two things are here, which is really neat. Okay, so the first is a code book. A code book, it sounds like some kind of spy thing, but a code book is really nothing more than a set of descriptions of what the variables are and how they're measured. So let's take a look at that for a minute. Load, load, load. Okay, here we go. TED's 2016 codebook. So let's see what it looks like. You know, here's an introduction, la 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 la. Data limitations, things you should know. Oh, variable descriptions and frequencies. Okay, so there's like case ID. Okay, great. You should always have a case ID. The year of admission, it's always 2016 here. Oh, look at the frequency. 1,699,261 cases. I love it. The age of, wow. Okay, and those are calculated. So there's the age under label, years 12 to 14, 15 to 17, and it's going to have values in the data of 1, 2, 3. So those are codes. At the gender, race, ethnicity, marital status, okay, education. This is great. This is a lot of information. And the case seems to be the individual person. I wonder if we can find waiting time. I just clicked, by the way, Control F. This is your real friend. Hit Control, then the F key. Hold down the Control key, hit the F key, and then you'll get a little bar, and then you can type in something that you're searching for in a big, long text file. And I typed waiting because I wanted waiting, and it takes me to page 31, days waiting to enter treatment, and it looks like the value is 0 if it's 0 days of waiting. From the first contact or request for service, like someone saying, I need to get admitted, until the client was admitted and the first clinical service was provided. Ooh. This item, guidelines, is intended to capture the number of days the client must wait to begin treatment because of program capacity, treatment availability, la 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 la. Great. It doesn't include time delays caused by client unavailability, people running away or stuff, or failing to meet requirements or obligations. It's all about program capacity, treatment availability. Great. This is exactly the sort of thing you're interested in. When people need treatment, is it available? Is it accessible? Can people get to it? It looks like the range is 0 days. The value is code is 0. 1 to 7 days, that's 1. 8 to 14, the code will be 2. 15 to 30 is 3. 31 and more is 4. Oh, neat. And then it looks like there's hundreds of thousands of pieces of data here. I want to see if it's available for the state of Maine. So let's type in Control F and type in Maine. Oh, look, yes. There is a code for the state code. And the state code that you'd be looking for is 23. That is the state of Maine. It looks like there are 10,018 results just for the year 2016, just for the state of Maine. And you have here in this data set looking at this code book, and you can find it again by following the procedure that I just used of noodling around. It looks like you have over 10,000 cases. You not only have the dependent variable, which is, how many days did people have to wait for treatment in the state of Maine, you have all these independent variables. And I encourage you to look through this code book and see what independent variables are there. It's a great way to think about what possible hypotheses you might generate. And the other thing you want to do is you want to read that research literature. What have people already looked at? Have they used the TEDS data set to make some predictions about what's going on in the state of Maine? You don't know. But the other thing on that page is that you can download data. And the neat thing about this that I see is that you can download it in a number of formats. These are all programs. Now, there's this one called delimited. I'll show you how this works. Delimited usually means it's comma delimited, which means that they put between the different observations of a variable, they put commas. And that is neat because you can read it using any research analysis program worth its salt, or any spreadsheet, including Microsoft Excel. Check this out. Okay, I have to agree to these terms, and I'm going to be a little unethical and say, yes, I'm going to agree to them. You might want to look and see what those terms of use are, because they might describe when you can and can't use the data, what you can't do with it, and what you can do with it, who can use it, who cannot. Maybe you have to write a letter saying, informing them that you're using it. Who knows what the requirements are? Look at that. I just want to show you what the data structure is. It downloaded a zip file. If you open up the zip file and you have a reasonably recent computer, it'll show you the ability to extract that. That's to make the file smaller. So I'm going to just open this thing. Right-click and open. And look, it's already got the Excel format there. So my computer knows that Excel should be able to read this. I'm so excited. Let's see what it ends up looking like, which is a little bit of time to search. Neat. Okay, have you got enough? By the way, while we're waiting for this to work, oh look, it's only opening here 6%. This is a big data set, 11%. This is millions of cases, right? Across the country, it's 10,000 for the state of Maine, so of course it's going to take a while. But EO, student. So you, I think, should have some lines of work. We found some literature. There's probably a lot more of it out there. Review that literature. See what the variables are that people have looked at. Take a look for yourself. And you are going to present some information that a lot of people in Maine don't know. This is going to be immediately useful, but it's time for you to start putting that work in. This is what you can do over spring break. After the exam, right? Because the exam is next week. We already, by the way, while we're waiting for this to open, we already reviewed what is going to be on the exam in that file. Please, okay, let's see what happened. Let's just take a look at the structure here. Oh, super, look at this. So it's got all the names of the variables, all their values, and let's find that one. Wait, oh, day weight, there it is. So there's a bunch with day weights of 0. Here's some day weights of 2, 3, 1, and it's not the number of days, remember. Remember, 2, 3, 1, and 0 indicate the code that's in the code book. Let's go back to day weight. Right where those codes that go up to 4 indicate the number of days here that the person had to wait. Sometimes at code 4, it's 31 or more. So yeah, neat. Oh, and how many cases are there? Yeah, over 1 million. That's a lot. Okay, so you have data that is out there. Think about this TEDS data set. Look into it some more. See what it can tell you. Okay, so let's move on now. Mary, I'm not going to use your last name. You said you just included like a short note that said, this is what I've done. You say now you're going to focus on school shootings only. Uh, and that means you have 31 schools or communities to compare where you had 86 before, and you're struggling with the concept of recovery for the communities. So I would look for in your literature review, what does recovery look like? What does resilience look like? How is it measured? What are the variables? Use that. You say your original thought was just that poor areas dealt with trauma less well. So dealing with less well, what does dealing with less well means? You say on a psychological level you can understand that, but on a community level it's a little harder to understand. Okay, so let's model a different approach to take. And that different approach to take is to take a look at data. So when you want to look at community level data, and I'm imagining these are 31 schools or communities, since we're talking about school shootings, that typically happens in the United States where the gun laws are more open. I'm imagining you're talking about the United States. The data set to look for community data is at factfinder.census.gov. And it is the American Community Survey. The Census Bureau is famous for its decennial census every 10 years. They count everybody, but they also have this annual survey called the American Community Survey, in which they go out and they look at a representative sample of the United States. And they really get a lot of observations from all kinds of towns all over the place, in order to be able to describe what's going on in those towns. And that is useful for a lot of businesses that want to, say, work and settle down in a place to open up a business. They want to know what are the demographics of the people around them. For hospitals, they want to know how many people of a certain age are there. You know, if you're going to open up a nursing home, where are there, nursing homes that are not set up, and there's a lot of old people who might need those nursing homes. So businesses use it, politicians use it. There's all kinds of reasons you might use it. Researchers also use it. So we're advanced here. So we're going to go right to the advanced search and then show me all. I love in this picture how this scientist is using a magnifying glass to look at the laptop. Um, use the zoom function. Okay. Anyway, sorry, that's just a pet peeve of mine. So we click show me all. I know it's just a metaphor, right? But there we go. So look, this is a search engine right here. Number one, put in some search terms. So if you're interested in poverty, you can look at that, and then it's going to give you selected economic characteristics for two things. You're going to see over here in dataset either ACS 5-year estimates, which means that it's collecting 2017, 16, 15, 14, and 13. Or if you go down a little bit, you can find the same information like poverty status in the last 12 months for the ACS 2017 5-year estimates, or just 1-year estimates here. So the advantage of 1-year estimates is that you can study change over years. The advantage of 5-year conglomerations of estimates is that there's more observations, there's more people that they study, and so they can be more exact and more precise, right? And also that they can include data on more communities, because the Census Bureau believes that you need a certain number of observations about a town, a certain number of people you interview in a town before you can describe the town, right? Like imagine that you went into, I don't know, Waldoboro, and you just talked to one person and you said, what is your income? What is your gender? What is your age? And then you use that one person to describe the whole town of Waldoboro? Not a good idea. So they may not in any 1 year be able to get enough people to describe Waldoboro, but over 5 years they would. So if you want to study like really nice small communities, use the 5-year estimates. If you want to study over time and you're studying large cities where there are already a lot of people anyway, you can use the 1-year estimates. And anyway, you could go look in there and then you can look in I about, and it will tell you in the example, oh, this is what you're going to get. You're going to get educational attainment, employment status, work experience. Oh, okay. How many people are 50% of poverty level? How many people are 125% of poverty level? Oh, cool. How many people are there who are male and female? Got it. Cool. I like that. And then how many of them are employed or unemployed, have educational attainment. So now you can get some ideas right here, right? So what is recovery like? Is recovery like people lose their jobs? Is recovery that people are poor? Or is it that you're studying that poor areas have more trouble with recovery? Well, you have a poverty measure here. That's great. What does recovery look like? How do people struggle? Um, do you have mental health issues? Let's see if there's anything for mental health. Oh, okay. We says we can't find anything. Oh, by the way, we want to clear our selections. Let's start a new search. We're looking for a new variable. We aren't interested in poverty. Hold on. Let's try mental illness. Well, there's mental disability, but that's not really what you're interested in. You know, depression. Let's just try mental, and let's look at mental disability. No, that's not what we're interested in. Hmm. Well, so you might want to think about, topics. That's another place that you could look. So I'm clicking over here on topics. What is it about people that we might want to study? Okay. So their age, disability. What does disability mean? Work disability? Could work disability be a result? Okay, what else do we have here? Population changes. Um, what's that? Do people move out? Oh, migration, right? Maybe a community has a lot of people leaving a place. Maybe you could look at migration. Um, what is relationship? Oh, do marital status. Does marital status change in a community after school shootings? You could look at that. So what I'm doing here, marital status. There you go. Um, fertility. Do people have babies after a school shooting in a community? I don't know. But so whereas for the previous student, EO, we were looking at the literature in order to inform this. Here we're looking at data sets and thinking, just looking through them and going through and thinking, is this related? Is that related? Um, when I think about disability, what are the disabilities? Work disability status. What does that mean? Oh, employment status. Do people go on disability? You know? And once, by the way, you just pick something. So let's take a look at disability estimates. The neat thing you can do in the US Census Bureau website, Fact Finder, American Fact Finder, for the American Community Survey is that you can remove geographies. So then you can click on those and you can say, oh, I want to, let's see, I want a particular state, city, county, town, like, Portland, Maine. Oh, cool. And then I can, I want one of those. Which one? I want the place within the state, the city of Portland, right? Okay, so I'm going to select that. And I want to go. I want it to show me the table. And now it's going to show me, how many people did not work with a disability or no disability, right? So on and so forth. All of these estimates of how many people are experiencing this for the city of Portland, Maine. You have 31 schools or communities where this happens. Can you find these variables for those cities and states? Something for you to think about. Does that kind of focusing help you think about what the different possibilities are for recovery? What does recovery look like? To think about what recovery looks like, think about what trauma looks like. What does a city that is traumatized look like? And think about looking before the event and after the event. Can you compare them? You could with this data. Okay, so two more to look at. So TD, what makes books attractive? A study in judging a book by its cover and other criteria. Oh, if this is the cover, it's really nice. You have a really nice table of contents. I like that. But then you have here an abstract. Your abstract is really short. You need a bigger abstract. You know that. I know you know that. One of the things I noticed here, your introduction, you say you need to add more. That's true. That's okay. You're working on it. Is that on the one hand, if I look in the literature review, there's some really slim references here. And then, like for instance, Leitao, Amaro, Enriquez, and Fonseca, you say, book publishers find it important to have a book be appealing by having the covers be enticing or by writing a compelling description about the book. That's interesting. But surely they wrote more than that. So I'm going to look at the back. And when I do, I'm going to find I'm going to go back to my friend Google Scholar. It's a really fast way to find an article. The title of that in your references section is Do Consumers Judge a Book by Its Cover? A Study of the Factors, etc., etc. That's probably good enough. Yes, it is. Okay. Okay. It says get access, so I'm not going to be able to read anything more than the PDF here, but okay. But let's just look. Excuse me, I'm not going to be able to read anything more than the abstract. Oh, look, but they're talking about more than that. They did a quantitative empirical analysis based on 487 valid responses. That's great. An online questionnaire. Oh, I wonder if you could get that questionnaire. See what they asked. Oh, look, it has more than what you indicated, right? Having the covers be enticing or writing a compelling description. It also says the book, the features that's most valued in a book, to buy things, the title, the synopsis, the subject, recommendation of family and friends, and are they on discount or on sale? So it looks like there's more variables there. Got it? So if there's more variables in that article, those variables should appear in your literature review. And then they should also appear in your survey. What I also noticed in your references section is that there is there's a reference that's at the end that I don't see included in the literature review. And that is, let's go back to scholar.google.com, by Dastos et al. What makes people want to read a book? Oh, haha. Let's type in the name of the article, Dastos. Looks like, here's another article here. Factors influencing readers' interest in new book releases. Let me see if I put this in quotes, what happens there. But I also want to look at that. Oh, here it is. What makes people want to read a book? An experimental study. And it looks like, here's a more recent version of it that got published. Factors influencing readers' interest in new book releases. An experimental study. What did they do? Experiment. What kind of experiment? Oh, look. 5 variables. Reputation of the author, that of the publisher, the attractiveness of the book cover, the degree to which the cover represents the content of the book, and the type of book. And they say that, what did they do? There's an experimental approach. I want to find out what the experiment was. I'd like to hear more about that. Tell me about it. And do more than tell me about that. It looks like that is maybe the updated version of this work. This is the updated version. There's a bunch of people who cite that. Ooh, who cites it? I'm click the cited by 59. Success drivers of fiction books. Aha. So interesting. quantitative analysis of reading habits. Oh, look at this. Judging a book by its cover. P. Dixon. Oh, that's not included. So let's take a look at that. Judging a book by its cover. Ooh, scientific study of literature. In this experiment, we investigated whether book covers can signal subgenre information. Ooh. So that's interesting. There's another thing for you to read. So you've got some more to work with. And then that should indicate what you should include on your survey. So finish your literature review before you send your survey out. We've talked more already about who you're going to send it to and what the limitations of that are, and that's fine. What the participants are, right? And what the materials are. You have what I really like. You have a consent form, and you have your survey, and I like that. The survey, by the way, you have a nice link about where it can be found. https://goo.goal/forms. Let's see if I can get this right. JG2Z, oh good gracious, ONMXCR7B 68J 83. It's a really nice survey. I like that you have here, this is your consent form. I like it. So you have gender, age, those are things that matter, okay? But you have all, oh, okay. You have a space where you can let people describe what they find about covers to be appealing. I like that. Okay. Large, medium, or small books, so their size. But what about those other variables, okay? Include those other variables. And then you're giving them a nice space to write something. That's great. So include those other variables. That's important. Continue your literature review and have them include those other variables. And finally, JA, is national security more important than human rights? So that question suggests that you're interested in the question about just one variable. Here's the things they could prefer in these letters to the editor. Okay, of which you say you're going to sample 100 of the about 550, and we'll talk about sampling, right, in just a minute. So the thing is, that's only one variable. What explains whether people are finding either national security more important or human rights more important? Because it is a variable. And the simple answer is some people prefer one, some people prefer another. What makes them different? You do indicate, to spite your title, which seems to only indicate that it's asking, and your first few pages are about, well, do people value one thing or the other in letters to the editor, national security versus human rights? You talk about gender. And that's only at the very end when it comes to measurement. So, you then ask a research question. Do women care more about national security or human rights, and vice versa? Which means, do women care more about national security or human rights? Do men care more about national security or human rights? Are they different for men and women? That is all of a sudden a hypothesis with an independent variable and a dependent variable. And you could assess that. That's great. I like the independent variable and dependent variable thing. But that is very different from what you describe at the beginning. So this is the point at which you want to make sure everything lines up, because under the introduction you say, my hypothesis is that many Americans believe more strongly in national security and the importance of national security over that of human rights. That's a different research question. So if you're going to use gender, great. go ahead and do it with a proviso that we need to talk about. But then you need to talk about that in your introduction, and that needs to be in your literature review. But your literature review seems to, well, it doesn't have that many citations to start with. It only has a couple, so you need some more, right? But your literature review is really not about that research question. Instead, you're talking about, like, say, Golder and Williams, when you're citing that. You're saying, it's important to use America's definition of terrorism, as other countries may use terrorism as suppression of its people to protest government. That's you creating a political opinion, and that's not about the research. And you say the United States goes in part by the definition intimidating a population or government so as to affect policy change, Golder and Williams, 2007. No definition of terrorism is perfect or completely correct and is ever changing. That's not about the question, right? Your job here is not to describe what terrorism is and what terrorism does, but what opinion is and what drives opinion among Americans. If we're going by what's at the end, what drives women versus men to value national security over human rights. So then think about that research question that you have. In these letters to the editor, what is the opinion that is expressed and how? And go back to the literature. Okay, so I'm not going to fill out your survey right now. And think about what drives those. National security, human rights, that's a place to start with. Public opinion, and so let's put public opinion in quotes. That's so we're searching for the phrase, and then the effect of gender. And let's see that issued saliency. Oh, and gender stereotypes. That's interesting. Oh, look, gender differences in public attitudes toward the use of force. Oh, that's interesting. So you might want to look at those things, right? I have a suggestion for you, something you might want to look up about the issue to get yourself started. Someone named Carol Gilligan wrote In a Different Voice, and she had this alternative to traditional, like Lawrence Kohlberg, moral development theory. And she said that there's an ethics of care and an ethics, or I think it's ethic, not ethics, of justice, right? So you can search about that. Her book was called In a Different Voice, and you can think about political arguments. You can see it down here. According to Gilligan, the male conception of morality may be stood as an ethic of justice, whereas the female conception can be seen as primarily an ethic of care. So what does that have to do with national security versus human rights? Well, one is to say of others, right? The others out there in the foreign lands. Are they ones that we need to carry out justice on, right? Justice, or are they folks that we need to care for? Human rights. Do we need to ensure human rights? So you could use those phrases then to think about, well, what is national security have to do with that? And you could search for that. Oh, it says here it's liberals and conservatives, but it's referring to this ethic of care thing. Maybe we want to include gender. Feminist critiques of liberal legalism, gender and peace building in the Routledge Handbook of Peace Building, women at war. Oh, interesting. Okay. Security as ethics, and this whole notion about gender and ethic of care, ethic of justice. Oh, NATO gender mainstreaming and the feminist critique of the law of armed conflict. Neat. So, what does that have to do with feminist theory and the idea of, well, how do we think about foreign policy? There are some pieces for you to read. Look for explanations, theories about why there might be a difference between men and women, or why there might not. And you can include that there in a literature review that is less about what terrorism is and what student JA thinks about terrorism and how it should be defined. That's a different subject. You're interested in looking at how whatever you think people should think, what people actually say. And that is in the New York Times. You say you want to use a subsample of, this is my final point, of 100 of these letters to the editor, and that you want to do a random sample of them. There's a great website for you to do that with, because there's 550, right? So you can think about giving each a number, and then you can go to a website, random.org, and you can find out what they think about true randomness. They use atmospheric noise in order to generate random numbers. So you could go over here to their random number generator, use a minimum number of 1 and a maximum of 550, because there are 550 of these articles. And if you give each of them a number, you can go through and you can generate once over and over and over again a series of numbers. Like this said, let's include number 150 in the sample, include 346 in the sample, include, there's 150 again, so we ignore that, 142. Okay, so then you're getting a set of which ones that you take, like the 142nd one in the list. So a final thing about gender. We talked about this before. What about gender indeterminate names like Pat or Chris or, even Leslie sometimes is a gender indeterminate name. So as opposed to like Rachel or David, right, which are fairly gender determinative names, at least in terms of names with gender assigned at birth. So when you go through and you're sampling, you might want to think about saying, well, when we find a gender indeterminate name, we don't know whether Pat Davis is Patrick or Patricia. We don't know. And so maybe you exclude that case from your sample of 100, and you just go on and you generate another one, right? 251 instead. And you just exclude those folks. That's not a perfect solution to the problem, but it's a pretty good one, and you might want to consider using it. Okay, so those are that's the feedback on folks who have been contributing materials by class time. But I just want to say one last thing, which is to kind of return to this theme, which is, first of all, do a literature review. Look for that literature. This is the time to find it before you do your study, because it should not just be something you do in order to have done it and then talk about things. It should inform your choices of variables. It should inform your hypotheses. And maybe you have a pet hypothesis that you want to introduce, great, but compare it to the other hypotheses. And then also use existing data sets for reference too. They can give you ideas and inspiration. Look at those data sets, they're out there. Look for variables in the literature, look for variables in data sets, and use them. They are tools for you. And what they allow you to do is to not feel like you have to come up with thinking about an entire subject all on your own, right from the ground up. No, stand on the shoulders of giants, the people before you who also stood on the shoulders of other people who have been thinking about this for a while. They've been pretty clever, and they've come up with some interesting ideas. I hope this is interesting and helpful feedback for you, and I hope that this video is able to help you get through this task. Do be ready for the exam that is coming up next week. You should have proctoring sites already scheduled. The exam went out a while ago, and the purpose of that exam is, I'm not trying to trip you up. Instead, it's a really an incentive that I'm providing for you to make sure you've got these important ideas in research method down before you're start to put your fingers into this research here. I hope you're starting to get excited about your topics. I certainly am getting excited about your topics. I'm really looking forward to how you're going to present them at the conference. I'd love to hear from you on that. Send me an email, talk to me about it, and we'll work it out. It's going to be really, I think, a fun time in the semester. You've been doing all this hypothetical work, and now you're going to go get some data and you're going to find out some answers. It's going to be exciting. I'm really looking forward to it, and I want to thank you for continuing on this journey. The class is going to start to get easier. You're doing the hard work now. Having done the hard work now, getting the data and reporting it and analyzing it, it's going to be easier than you think. We'll have an okay time with it. And you're going to have something really interesting and maybe something new to say. You'll have maybe something that nobody else has ever known before, which will be pretty cool. Okay, I'll see you next week, or at least I'll see your exams next week. Remember, we do have that exam next week, so be ready and prepared to take that exam, and then we'll have spring break. I'll be contacting you about whether you put in your submission and in what format for that undergraduate student research conference that's happening April 26th. The deadline to submit is March 22nd. Okay, thanks. I appreciate it, and good luck on the exam.